vicariously doing it to us. It's like some sort of weird sexual kink. He's probably somewhere in hell right now,
Going
fucking
there for
whacking off.
Eddie. Fucking hip guy. Oh, yeah, I'm going to do a foreigner.
Oh, yeah,
Fuck
exactly.
Outta here. But I think it was about chapter 42 when I realized I hate white people. Classism, environmentalism, from racism. After reading this, not think it's an allegory about male intimacy in the most purest form, homosexuality.
And they said he's out there trying to sell shrunken heads, okay? You don't fool me, okay? This was a sex worker. Yeah. And a whale, a sperm whale.
Don't get me started on that film adaptation. Who played Quapeg? It wasn't somebody named Quapeg, I'll tell you that much.
No, it's probably some guy named Randy.
I was reading about the author here, and I was like, there's going to be nothing I like about this white man. But then I found something I liked about him. He's dead.
Jerking off sperm whales in the middle of the fucking
there in
ocean.
The print. Right there in the print. Did we even read the same book?
Sperm. Watch out, Ahab. You keep getting it in your beard. Move. You gotta move. It's either you gotta swallow or you gotta move, buddy.
It's a catcher.
Sperm. Sperm. Good for my... The oils are good for my beard. It's losing its luster because of these dry ocean winds.
Spermaceti.
I need some spermaceti now.
Moby Dick. 400 pages. Ahab dies at the end. You're welcome. I love you, man, but I hate this fucking book.
Hey, how's it going, universe? Welcome to another episode of Zoobox Goes to the Library. My name is Shaun. I'll be your host, and with me, as always, on Goes to the Library is Big Paul. What's going on, Big Paul?
Hey, buddy. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's always a pleasure. And guess what, buddy? Just call me Zoobox, because that's right. We're talking about Herman Melville's seminal novel, Moby Dick, from 1851. The book is the sailor Ishmael's narrative of the maniacal quest of Ahab, captain of the whaling ship Pequod, for vengeance against Moby Dick, the giant white sperm whale that bit off his leg on the ship's previous voyage. Oh, yes. So this is a classic American novel. Some say the first modern classic. This is what I've been learning. I've been listening to some very well-read, well-studied men, and that's what they said. They said this is technically the first great American novel, which I thought was interesting. They said because it's talking about, in some ways, it's talking about America of that period. And it really does a great job of kind of breaking down all these different facets that were going on in culture at the time. Whaling being a pretty big one. Whaling made up about 50% of the U.S. economy at the time. It was crazy. They were out and then they suffered for that as well because they basically killed everything within reach. Yeah. And then it became kind of more of a hot commodity, or at least not such a stable job anymore. You had to become a different kind of fisherman. But anyways, so you offered up this book. We had read Blood Meridian. We had a great conversation. If people haven't heard our Blood Meridian conversation, I implore you to go check that out. Maybe even before you listen to this one. It's kind of the precursor to Moby Dick. So you brought it up.
Yeah.
Explain yourself.
No. So I was listening to this Yale professor. She was doing a free lecture on YouTube, and she was talking about Blood Meridian. And I wanted to hear that analysis about it. And then she made the comment that McCarthy should have given credit to Melville for Blood Meridian, for Moby Dick. And I just thought that was really interesting because, like we said in the previous episode, go check it out, that that was the most violent, and beautiful mixed feeling book I've ever read in my life.
Yeah.
I was like, well, that's really interesting. So I was like, I had to have this be my next book. And so I wanted to invite my good buddy Shaun, say, hey, buddy, let's go on this journey.
Yeah.
Right? And it's one of those things, too. It's just it's so embedded in the pop culture, right? So many things reference it that we don't even know, right? And as I was reading it, excuse me, as I was reading through it, I was just like, oh, that's where that's from. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just like little tidbits like that. But it's just all I knew about that is that it was wicked long. And it's a classic, and there's been a bunch of adaptations in film, about it with our man Orson Welles. One of them, the 1956 one, Gregory Peck, uh, and like all this stuff, but just never like why it just never picked it out. And so because I was like so like Blood Meridian was like a quasi religious experience, I was like, and this very smart person from Yale was
Yeah.
like, hey, they should have given Melville credit for Blood Meridian. I was like, I have to check this out
Well,
now.
I think it's because we were very taken and very fascinated with Cormac McCarthy, and you kind of want to understand him more, right? Like that's kind of the impetus for this. And also, I think we both, in our aged years now that we're getting older, you're kind of like, I gotta go read some of these classics.
Hmm.
Like I really want to be like a well-rounded person in that respect, in that
Right,
regard, right? And
right.
Moby Dick is definitely something that should have come up, regardless, right?
Hmm.
But just the extra factor that it's connected to Cormac McCarthy in some way was very fascinating, and it kind of has you reading the book looking for that too.
Yeah,
Because as I was reading Moby Dick, I was kind of drawing comparisons in my mind. I kind of couldn't help myself,
yeah,
between the two novels and kind of the structure of them and the nature of the crew on the Pequod versus the gang in Blood Meridian.
hmm.
Kind of a lot of this, a
And
lot of
yeah,
similar
they,
vibes, a lot of similar makeup, even the diversity, if you will,
right,
of the
exactly.
crew and the gang. Like those are things to remark upon, right?
Yeah, yeah, and the whole human experience, the boredom of a voyage and the rapid, like, life threatening experiences that you get into, like the up and down.
Yeah.
It was really good. And then, Ahab and the judge. But again, it's not Blood Meridian, but Blood Meridian was definitely what made me want to check this out. So,
Hmm.
yeah, man, that's and we did it.
We did it. We finally did it. It took us a
About a
minute.
month.
It
About a
took us
month.
about a month, about 5 weeks, I think, altogether. But
Yeah.
I'm glad that we did that. I don't think something like Moby Dick, in the same way that I was glad that Blood Meridian ended up taking us a long time to actually get around to finishing and talking about, is because you could really take it in. Like I've really had the past month just kind of thinking about Moby Dick all the time.
Yeah.
Just kind of thinking about it while I kind of took my time reading it too, which I think was made it a better experience.
Yes, yes, you can't binge it, right? It's built for a time to appreciate and to take things in, let it breathe, as you say, right?
Yeah.
But that's kind of like my general, like my takeaway from my like reading experience is that I infinitely enjoyed thinking about the story way more than I did reading it.
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah.
Yeah.
You really like the entire time? Like, not did it ever hook you at all? Like, as in terms of a piece of writing? Because I found some of it like incredibly exciting.
In parts, right? So like I sent you that one short with my probably my favorite paragraph where
Hmm.
it's talking about the cannibalism of the ocean that's been at war since the world began, and like it's just like really beautiful stuff, and it just comes out of nowhere. But I would say kind of like, and like I'm just going to give Melvin, rest in peace, like the benefit of the doubt that like what, because okay, so let me put in the context, right? So you get really dry section in there. Like he really wants you to know what the world is like at this time,
Hmm.
what the art of whaling is. Like it is a labor of love for Melville to go ahead and like write this. He wants you to know how difficult this work is, how like guttural it is, and how
And where
dangerous it is. So when you
in
get
in its
to
place in history in relative to mankind. Yeah.
right, and so when you get to like the actual hunt, like you're invested in it, right? And
Yeah.
so, but to get to that, it's a world which the parallel is just like going on a whaling journey, where it's just nothing but ocean, fair seas, ocean, nothing, 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 and then there she blows, and next thing you know, you just went for weeks of like complete boredom just out there, and
Hmm.
now your adrenaline's pumped up, you're getting in a fucking like this whole concept of whailing, dude, like what they did,
It's
doesn't that
so
blow
crazy,
your fucking mind? Like
dude.
we are going
It
to
really
get in a
does.
little boat, a little wooden boat, and we're going to go by this Leviathan, which, by the way, people, that just means like sea monster. And just look it up right away or know what that is. Don't be like me and be like, what the fuck is Leviathan after you've seen it like 20 times? All right, that's it. I'm putting the book down. I'm picking up my phone. What the fuck does Leviathan mean? But anyways, like, and just going through this like insane process of like a gigantic like 70-foot well, and I'm just going to harpoon this motherfucker, and then we're going to tie it back and ring it
And we're
up.
gonna Drag it
Like,
with a boat. Yeah.
how do you get on the boat? How do you harness it?
Like how did mankind in general get the gumption to even try to do? Like, imagine the
hunger,
first whaler, the first
hunger,
whaler.
dude,
Oh,
hunger,
hunger. Well,
hunger,
actually, you're probably right. Yeah,
hunger. It's just like that fish is huge, right? And
huge.
then just imagine the shock when they found out actually how huge it was when the first successful row, right? Because even like indigenous people, like our man, Queepeg, but like from Alaska where we used to live, or any of the Polynesian islands, just going out like these like little tiny boats. We're going to go and like just the fucking balls,
The
dude. Just like
balls.
to
Yeah.
go out and go do this, and then figuring out and the resourcefulness, like everything, because like whale oil literally fueled the industrial revolution, right?
Hmm.
Land all the homes and stuff like that. Just like figure out what do we do with this shit, right? And then, I won't regret, but just what a brutal freaking industry that I believe is still only legal in Japan and some
Hmm.
native for some native tribes in the U.S. and some
Yeah,
Polynesia.
for
But
cultural reasons, we allow them to
yeah,
do that. Yeah.
for gold.
Japan is just because that's just they have an industry and they just have the.
Well, the Japanese, they're like 50% based and 50% perverted.
That's
So
true. Yeah,
that's like the
that's
Japanese.
where anime is from, Paul. You know.
I know that, hence the 50% perverted.
You know
So
what I mean? Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Which side note, Kaiju number 8 is yeah. I'm really enjoying that series. Available on Crunchyroll. Not getting sponsored at all,
Ooh,
but
I might have to check that out because if it's got kaiju's in it, my son would absolutely adore it. Actually, my son really liked Moby Dick. Actually.
yeah. No, he would. I don't want to go off the rails, but yeah, no, he would definitely eat up Kaiju number 8. Yeah, it's a fun one.
Okay.
Oh,
Okay.
I let it. Yeah. I let my daughter watch it too. So. But anyways, dude, yeah, but back to Melville's genius, giving him the benefit of the doubt. Reading this book was just going through like a whaling expedition. Like you go through these dry fucking spells, dude.
Yeah.
Just think about the introduction to Captain Ahab, right?
Yeah.
You don't really get to meet him until fucking chapter 68, right? But like
Yeah.
10
He's spoken
back,
of a few times. They see him. I
they
think
see
chapter
him,
40 that he gets
right?
on the ship.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. People start talking to him just like a fucking whale sighting, dude. Like, oh, is he there? Like, what's going to
Kind
happen?
of. Yeah.
And when he
Yeah.
shows up, boom, larger than life. It's Ahab. We're going ashore. I'm going to flop it out right here for the haul. The ship meets the sea. Like, this is my show. I may not own this boat, but I own this fucking boat. Okay. Let's go. Starbuck, quit being a bitch. Let's go. Right.
Listen, he's a
And so,
man with
like,
a
the whole,
purpose.
like, reading the book, right? So it's just kind of like, that was kind of like my reading experience, like going through it, and like
Yeah.
some of your sentiments of enjoyed reading, getting in particular getting to take your time with like reading the book. That's the way to do it, right? That's the way to do it. This is not something you're going to knock out in a weekend, right?
No. No. No.
Yeah,
I mean,
you'll
you could, but I think the way it's structured is so weird, and that it invites you to ponder.
yeah.
So it's good to because it has a lot of like natural episodic breaks,
Hmm.
and it's good sometimes just to stop and just kind of reflect on what you just read. You know?
Yeah, no, absolutely, dude. And that's part of what brought me to my takeaway. But okay, I read it, let it settle. And did you feel accomplished after you read it? Like you did a
Yes,
thing?
I
Me
did.
too.
Yeah,
Like I finished it, I was just like, fuck yeah. Because I read it, I listened to the Audible
me too.
but too. Actually, shout out to F for Fiction on YouTube. This king just fucking read it 22 hours
Yep,
and then
he
boom,
did.
right out that way. I was like, hell yeah, hell yeah. But anyways, but that was why I think my like takeaway is just I love thinking about it more than I did actually reading it,
I can
and
understand that. Yeah,
and it made me wonder too. Like, but is that what makes a good novel?
I think so.
Think about it, then reading it, or is it should
Sometimes the work is what provides the pleasure. Like you have to do the work to be able to do something like we're doing now, right?
right?
Because
Yeah,
it's such a rich book. There's so many things to talk about. There's so many fascinating aspects of it that even though it did feel like it was kind of a drag sometimes, it was a little bit of a slog in the middle of that fucking book, dude. Like
yeah,
it really was.
yeah.
And then like it just felt, it felt redundant at times, like especially with all the gams. It's
Hmm.
just like the same scene playing out 3 times before jackpot.
Hmm.
But like and they all have their interesting aspects and stuff. I'm not trying to say that it's completely unnecessary or whatever. But when you're reading it, you're just like, okay, come on, let's get on with it a little bit. But
Yeah.
now, having read it and listened to it, I'm glad for that stuff. Like, because it's really impactful. It draws such a well drawn picture. Like, it's so specific, and you understand it. Like, you understand every aspect of it. And I really loved the ponderous nature of the philosophy. And because Melville is kind of asking questions more than he's giving you answers.
And he doesn't hold your hand through any of it.
No, but he wants to inspire you to think about your life in a different way.
Right.
Think about yourself in like as part of a larger continuum, and how your actions affect other people, and what is loyalty, and what does it mean to be a man? What does it mean to be a captain? What does it mean to be a human being? Like, that's all in there, and it's really, and I love that stuff. I love those parts of the book.
Right.
So much.
Absolutely. But the one last thing too, like you said, it really forces you to be invested into it, right? And you hear a lot, like when we critique books or movies or whatever, like one of the like most like go-to things is like the character development. Like why do I care about this, right?
Yeah.
This is the only thing I can think of. Jumping, maybe I'm missing something obvious, but I never thought of it through this lens. This is the only time where I thought like the world building, the development, and the actual like trade of what they're doing. Like there's so much in developing, painting the picture for this, right?
Yeah.
Just like the real world, it's not all that entertaining, right? But it has its purpose. You need to know how to operate, right? And then he really put in that level, because like now I know what cytology means now.
Exactly, 100%.
And like it just like before Ahab, right? You're getting to it. Oh, he's coming up. He's coming out of the mast, and then boom, 30 pages about cytology. What the fuck?
I know,
right?
I know. Yeah, he's like, I know you've all been waiting for Captain Ahab, but let's take a short sojourn for 12 pages about all the different kinds of whales.
Right. And we're going to get into
it. But he does interesting stuff in there. A lot of it's very dry, but he's mixing in other thoughts about the nature of whales and the nature of man, and like what drives us, and why do these whales do this? It's kind of like people. Like there are asides like that in there. Definitely are. But yeah, it's very dry at times. It can be. It can be.
But again, that's just my like take of it is like he wrote it like a whaling excursion.
Well, because this goes into who Melville is as a person and his history prior to writing Moby Dick. He is kind of a man of means a little bit. Like he was an educated person, but he still decided like he wanted to go kind of find his own way out in the world. He was and he joined a fishing vessel, ends up in the Polynesian Islands. He writes a book. That's the first book he writes. It's like a journalistic kind of book. It's a memoir called Taipei. That's where the character Queequeg comes from, and his kind of fascination with Polynesian culture in general. So there's a lot of that in Moby Dick. It's because he's done all these things. And there are parts that are journalistic. Even actually in Moby Dick, there is a whole chapter that's just about the Polynesian Islands.
Yeah.
And about Queequeg, where Queequeg's from. It's not about Queequeg, it's just about where he's from.
Right.
Which is that, in all honesty, like I enjoyed a lot of that stuff because I felt like I was getting an education.
Yeah.
I felt like I was actually learning something. Like I know things now that I didn't know before, and not just like notions about like philosophy or humanity or the human condition, but just literally what it was like to be a whaler back in the day.
Yeah.
How, I was so impressed when they have that scene with Captain Ahab and he's like looking at all the charts and all the maps. I was just like thinking in my head, I'm like, wow, like people figured that out.
Yeah.
Figured out how to know where whales were going to be.
Yeah.
And then also how to find a particular whale, because Moby Dick is actually not unique in that. Because, there would be, because he goes to explain it. He's like, you probably think it's fucking crazy that this guy thinks he's going to find this one whale in this great big ocean. Let me tell you how he's going to do it. Actually, it's not that unique. There's like a bunch of whales that have names.
Right.
And and this is also, and I think a lot of that stuff is actually the reality. Like that's actually from the stories of people and fishermen, etc., from the time. And I loved all that. I really loved a lot of that stuff because I just found it kind of innately fascinating. I was just impressed that people did that.
Yeah.
It just kind of reminds you how fucking easy you have it, how soft we all are. Like those guys used to go out for 3 years at a time and then come back home for like a couple months and go do it again.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's wild, dude.
That's the way of life. This is living. All right. It's
Well, because it has that kind of band of misfits vibe. Like you got it. Not every it's, being a whaler or being a fisherman in general is just not for everybody. A lot of very eccentric characters out there. That's why we have shows like Deadliest Catch, right?
yeah.
You're kind of a wild person if you're out there doing that shit. You really are.
Yeah.
Like you know, or this is the end of the road. This is the last thing you can do because you fucked up your life so bad. That's also another thing that happens quite a bit.
Right. Or there's nothing on land that can make what you're making doing, this
Doing
dangerous.
that shit, yeah.
Because like a lot of people, unfortunately, they find themselves in positions where they're not getting paid for what they know, they're getting paid for what they're willing to do, right? And
Yes.
so then you get in that, into that grind. But like not nonetheless though, like it really like I never even before reading this, I never even thought about fucking whaling or like that
Yeah, me
industry,
neither.
right?
Me neither,
And now I
honestly,
feel
yeah.
like I could write a fucking dissertation on it. I'm like, well, actually, yeah, actually, in the 19th century,
Yeah.
and actually too, just because like complete dad mode. But I'm like, I kind of want to go to New Bedford and see the fucking like
Yeah.
whale history museum and like go see
Yeah.
like
Me
all
too,
the
actually. I was like,
things
man, I want to go
dedicated
to
to Melville.
Nantucket.
Right, dude. Right, and so it was that was pretty wild, man. It was pretty wild. But I think he did a lot. It seemed like he was really into like contrasting a lot of things too, especially like Ishmael and Ahab, the names of the boats and everything too. Like,
Hmm.
and like you said too, this is easily. Okay, and we both agree, like wow, like McCarthy, his whole quote of being, books are built on books, right? So we can definitely see that Moby Dick was absolutely like an inspiration, as it was to many things in
Of course, yeah.
pop culture, but especially in Blood Meridian. But but it is really rich with like a lot of themes and like the things that chew on. But like what things like popping out at you that you would like to like kind of dive into?
Oh, well, the thing I find the most fascinating is Ishmael's relationship with Ahab relative to his obsessions. And what I really loved about Ishmael actually was that he understands that is very attractive, that it's alluring. He
Mm,
sees himself in Ahab a little bit. There's something that can take a hold of you, that's
yeah,
and almost possess you. And he recognizes that in Ahab. He also recognizes the potential for that in himself, and he
mhm.
starts questioning whether or not the whaling life is really for him as a
Right.
consequence of that. Ahab's whole disposition and his fight against Moby Dick, and what is it? What is it actually? What does it actually mean for Ahab?
Right.
Which is, I guess, typically people say it's like, well, man versus nature, man versus God. Ahab is kind of the ultimate modernist in a way, where it's always just this drive forward. I must conquer. I must destroy. I
Yeah.
must. I must have. I must have my material desire. I must have it.
Right.
And that's also kind of reinforced with the fact that he's got these gold doubloons. In terms of like his kind of, he likes to have things. He likes tokens. He likes symbols of his stature, of his success. Even like
Exactly.
his peg leg being made out of whalebone is very
Dude, it's like
pointed.
exactly, and like what a message that is. Like a
Yeah,
whale bit off my leg. I'm going to replace my leg with whale bones, and then I'm going to go back out. I'm going to get it, but that is to do destroy. But also too, like because he made comments of being at sea for 40 years, right?
yeah.
40 years he's been out at sea, and then just imagine being out at sea where you are the master of your universe. You're on that ship, dude. There's nobody for like
No,
thousands and
there's
thousands of
no law. You're
miles
an you're
away.
in you're in an anarchist environment
Right, and
almost,
you
right?
are it.
With
You are the guy.
with ships full of weirdos and reprobates.
Right, right. Like pagans, fucking like
Yeah,
thieves, like or whatever, and like you got to keep them in line, and you got to be, you got like so like Ahab makes sense in a way if you look in the context of I spent 40 years of
of
my life
course.
see I got to do this, and now when something challenges you, that's mutiny, and what is more devastating than on a ship? environment than mutiny, right? You
Hmm.
got to do this. And that this well dared to do something that he spent his whole life crafting and mastering and really believing in it, right? So it's
Yeah,
definitely
he takes it personally.
like,
It's a personal defeat. Yeah.
yeah, up on ego, but there is something fascinating about going against nature or just trying to challenge, right? It just even back to the Greeks with Icarus flying too close to the sun. It's
Yeah.
just like there's like understand the limitations, understand the roles, the laws of nature, right? And then
Hmm.
you don't understand how can just make you go mad,
You have to have respect for it. Like you
right?
have to understand it, and then I think that's that's Ahab's fatal flaw, is that it's like this intense form of narcissism.
Hmm.
This like he decides he's not going to respect what he does anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, he does that by kind of not heeding the warnings of that he has. There's, I mean, the book is just full of foreshadowing,
Hmm.
constantly. I mean,
Yeah.
it's constantly setting up things, and like that's just like this is all leads to doom. This is for ruin,
Yeah.
and he knows that. Ahab knows that.
Right.
Ahab does not think he's coming back. He knows he's not coming back. He doesn't care. That's why he's so willing to give away his shares.
Yeah.
The last push, because
Like
he's able to rally the boys. He rallies the boys. He lets them do a little regular whaling to kind of keep them
fresh,
busy, keep them
sharp.
fresh, and feel like they're doing something, making money out there. Keep quell the any kind of tensions that could arise. And then when he needs to give them that last push, he's like, "I'll give you everything. I'll give
Yeah.
you everything."
Go at it three
And
days.
then he does that, and then he like regains their love, and then he inspires their like sense of heroism
Right.
in them, because he gives like there's some great like rousing Ahab speeches in this book. Like they rival the judge. Like
Hmm.
some great language, just
Yeah.
so much fun. And
Yeah.
actually, in the movie, Gregory Peck. Well, I don't think the movie's like amazing or anything. Gregory Peck is pretty. He delivers some of that stuff very well.
Yeah, quick anecdote. Like after reading the book, I have no desire to watch any of the movies. I
Well,
did just because I'm a sucker for Orson Welles. I did watch his sermon.
yeah,
I did watch that, but I don't know. Maybe when I might change my mind later. But I'm too fresh off the book right now. I'm just like I
it's
don't need. I
it's a
like.
very lean adaptation, and
Mm,
it's more focused on Ahab than the book is.
gotcha.
Like Ahab's kind of like the almost like a main like a kind of like a main character, especially in the second half. Like he's
Hmm.
kind of takes over the movie, so
Yeah.
it condenses all of the Ahab stuff into the last
Yeah.
hour, basically.
Yeah. But even Ahab's progression into complete madness to his ultimate demise, right, is still kind of like the same pace of the book.
Yes.
So, like everything goes swallow draw, and then whoop spikes. We spotted it, and then boom, and then it ends, right? And like everything is in that. Like even like like young Pip, like his right, like everybody's experience falls into that pattern to include
Yeah.
you as the reader, like going through this. So it was pretty nuts.
Well, that's kind of like what's cool about the structure of the book, and that's cool about like letting you in on the boring nature of being a fisherman.
Yeah.
Is that you, like you just said, like you parallel their experience.
Hmm.
You're like, oh, come on, let's get on with it a little bit. All right, I don't need to hear about them fucking playing cards or
Yeah.
whatever, or just for whatever.
I don't
And
want
and then
stuff.
suddenly somebody's up in the crow's nest and
Hmm.
a whale.
Yeah. I don't want Stub giving the cook all this shit. Like what the hell, man? Like what an asshole. Dude, Stub is an asshole.
Stub is he is the probably the biggest source of levity in the book.
Hmm.
He's always there busting balls, we'll
Hmm.
say.
Yeah. No, he was my favorite. Like one of my favorites.
Yeah, well, if I had a secret MVP, it would be Stub.
Hmm. For sure.
That'd be my
But
guy.
yeah, but dude, one of the most things too, like with Ahab, that just really got me in the gut, and it's probably because like we're dads,
Yeah.
but like when the captain from oh god damn, what was that boat? The Rachel.
Yes. Yeah. The Rachel when he
Advised, like
doesn't
my
help them.
son, like we lost the whaling boat. My son's on it. Can you help me find it? Which is supposed to be like code out and sea.
You have to.
Help
Yeah.
them. And then he's like, "No, buddy. Like, have you seen the white whale? All right, yeah, yeah, not, yeah, okay, yeah, then we're done." I was just like, "Holy fuck!"
Well,
And then,
because he calls him out. Well, he calls it's kind of pointed because he calls him out specifically like this is not Christian
mhm,
specifically, and Ahab Like
What
he's just
what
like,
cracked me out about that is like, for Captain Rich, I'm like, oh dude, you don't even know, dude. Ahab just straight up did a baptism by pagan blood to the devil with their harpoons, man. You're going to talk about that Christian, dude? You have no idea what shit Ahab is on right now. This shit is happening, man. There's some better not being between the whale and him. Because then, oh man, then you want to talk about that Christian, dude? He's going to do, he's going to do some Sam Smith esque shit to that boy. Let me tell you. But dude, yeah. But that scene too just got me just like all the build up to that, like go get my son and just to just be like, no, like
well,
it's just
that's
like,
one of the
oh,
things that isn't that one of the things that makes the crew like, what are you doing?
mm-hmm.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, well, Starbuck from the get go is not into this, but
Starbuck gets into it, right, and it's just kind of like another. I'm just going to do it anyway. I swear it'll be my last Meridian like comparison.
no,
But
no, I
we
mean,
see that with several people that try to kill the character of the judge in Blood Meridian, but they can't, right? And then it's just, are they cowards? Are they having a sense of integrity? Or is it for the greater crew, right? In that
yeah,
case, gang, right? And so like we have like Starbuck that actually got himself into, right? And this ties back to what you said earlier, where it's so rich with human experience and who are you going to be in this world, right? And then you
yeah,
take somebody like Starbuck, who is a respectable person and a freaking like very cutthroat and brutal trade, right? He's going there. He goes out of his way to be, to be a bro. Well,
yeah.
to be a
No,
man of integrity to go do
he
that.
wants to be.
He's looking after the stakeholders, the actual owners of the Pequod's like ship. He's working about like all these wells and the oil that we blubber we've already harvested. Now we got to get this back. Like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, we yielded a bounty here. We need to bring it back, right?
Yeah,
He's focused on this, and then picking up and his slow build up, picking up too. Like he's like, what right does he have to take the lives of every man on the ship and do this? But then ultimately makes a decision, holds the gun that Ahab actually pointed at him earlier on in there, because Ahab is fucking,
he's
like,
wild.
but yeah, but you think 40 years at sea, crews are made up of people literally from all over the world. That's you got to rule with an iron fist, right?
Of
So there's like
course,
there's
yeah.
part of it was just where I want to say like I'm internally defending Ahab the way Ahab is, but it's more like I
No,
just if you really think about that, like,
Ahab was a good captain.
yeah,
He was.
yeah,
He is a good captain.
right.
He
Well,
inspires people.
yeah. So,
I mean, but like it's just, but this thing broke him,
yeah,
and not everybody knows that, except for Starbuck. And Starbuck is conflicted because he has loyalty to the stakeholders. He also has loyalty to Ahab,
yeah,
and he has a responsibility to the crew to make sure they're safe as best he can. He's the
mm,
conscience of the captain. He's the first
right,
mate,
yes,
and I think what he thinks is he's going to be able to convince Ahab over time to let it go. Like,
hmm,
because he's like, I understand. You're mad. You're mad. You're pissed. Like, okay, I understand.
right, yeah,
And that's kind of his position for a while, even when he's pushing back, because
right,
he always kind of retreats a little bit. And he's like,
right.
okay, all right,
But it just doesn't pull the trigger. So when you get to that point, are you as a reader like the same way we were with the judge? I lied. I'm bringing it up again. Like, pull the trigger, pull the trigger. Are you the same way, like reading it like Starbuck? Just do it, buddy. Just do it. Pull it, and then like, did you have the whole like, Starbuck's a coward, or is he just no? He's just gonna die with integrity. Like,
I think I
what was your
no, I
like?
thought he just thought it was the. I think they were so far into it at that point, he just didn't see another way out. So it's the only way to even have a chance is to just go through it.
Hmm.
Like, if anybody's even going to have a chance, we have to be unified and we have to just do it.
Yeah.
Obviously, it doesn't work out, but I think that's kind of in the way. I mean, it's not. He doesn't explicitly say anything like that, but I think if you're just kind of like thinking about the scenes between him and Ahab leading up to that moment, I feel like that's what I got from that relationship.
Right.
You
Right.
know?
No, that was yeah, yeah. Because I had that too. I was like, oh man, you gonna do it, and he didn't. I was like, pussy. That's why he's the first mate, and he's not Captain Ahab, right? But
Sure.
going
Yeah.
back to what you're saying, like who are you going to be in this world, right? Like we all know a Starbuck one degree or the other, right? And sometimes like to a fault, and then sometimes to just the the bliss of their nature, right? Their
Hmm.
proclivities, like. You are supporting somebody because you think it's the right thing to do, but you don't realize that you're about to go and get fucked over because this person's not a good person, or this isn't going to bode well for you, but it's going to make you sleep well at night, right? Like we all know a variation of Starbuck, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like growing like through life, right? I don't know too many people know an Ahab, right? And that's probably like what makes him like so like special as a character to read there too. So like he was definitely Dev, and I said earlier, but like the whole build up to him and then getting introduced to him and like the whole like everything with him in it just made the whatever you're reading better.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, I would say like the only people that I've ever met that have any qualities like Captain Ahab are junkies.
but
Enigmatic
okay, but
junkies
that's
that
the
like he's fiending the whole time until he just has to have it.
you're right, but that's an aspect of like his like crippling
No,
maddening
he
feature.
has this addiction to this pursuit. Like he has to have it.
Yeah, but in totality of like as a person, like commanding larger in life, can rally the troops,
No, he's
fucking knows
awesome.
what he's doing,
He
right?
fucking
Like
rules.
very few people know, like have witnessed like an Ahab is
Yeah,
what.
somebody that inspiring and stuff. I mean, you have me,
Yeah,
so
but
you're
yeah,
covered.
but we know we definitely know for junkies.
Yeah, yeah. No, but like
Good night.
no, I think no, but like Captain Ahab is like he has a weird honorability about him.
Yeah,
There is, and but you kind of get that sense from most of the characters.
you know,
They're like good people, for lack of a better way to put it. Maybe some are rougher than others, but
the scene,
generally they have a sense of honor about themselves and a self-awareness where they don't want to bring shame to themselves.
right?
And that's something that's lacking in the modern era. But
Isolation of the sea, the voyage brought out the camaraderie and the honor of like everybody, but it also in that isolation through the tutelage of Ahab and their own like lust for need, gold medallions, the bounty, and like all this other stuff, brought out the worst, which was chasing something to their demise,
mhm.
knowing full well that this was going. Because like, dude, 3 days they went after Moby Dick, right? And you think like, okay, day two, I can kind of get day two, right? I can kind of get day two, but all right, fuck it, like, yeah, no, let's not take the L and go home now. Like, let's do it. But day three, so like
Hey,
that, like it's like so Ahab is really that balling, right? Or everybody? I mean, it's like it's crazy. That's why I love thinking about it more than I love
well,
reading.
that's why like he pops out occasionally. And it's just like, men, we need to sally forth, like, because he
Mhm,
has to, because he's leading them on a what feels like, I'm sure for them, a wild goose chase.
mhm.
Like,
But 40 years knowing this, right? Knowing when to peep in, knowing how this, right? Intentionally, like I'm going to keep myself away from everybody. I know this
yeah,
hole. This is not my first rodeo, right? And this is the part where I come out. This is knowing, like, just commanding the ship, both like in the literal sense as a captain, but also just like subconscious with everybody. This is when I need to be seen, and like knowing when I'm going to be the most impactful too. It was just really wild,
yeah.
really wild,
But he
wild.
also, oh, you know what I forgot? Which I can't believe I forgot this, but like Captain Ahab, actually, one of his first betrayals to his crew is that he has an alternate crew.
Dude. So yes.
Like, that's kind of one of the first things that makes everybody like, what the fuck?
Hmm.
Because they just come out of the captain's quarters one day
Hmm.
and they're like, what?
Yeah, and even that had a build up to it as well. They're like, I fucking heard something down there. Like, no,
Yeah,
dude, we
yeah,
haven't been at sea that long, buddy. Come on, come on, come on. No, I swear, I heard something. And then,
yeah.
what do you know? What do you know? So that was nuts, man. Did you want to switch gears to Ishmael?
Yeah, let's talk about Ishmael,
So Ishmael
our
did
humble
it.
narrator.
Our like him coming in there. Yeah, it's just like his opening, like like monologue, if you will. It's just coming in. He's just sitting there, like okay, obviously, like young guy, just kind of full of his choice of words of like, I'll let other people have a more lavish lifestyle. I'll do this and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
he's
And
Melville. He's
right,
Melville when he was a young man. Yeah.
so that's what made me actually look into Melville because I was reading this. I was like, this is pretentious as fuck, dude. Like, no fucking sailor is going to read
Goodbye,
this.
father. I'm
And
going
yeah,
to go sow my wild oats out on the Nantucket seas.
right, and then yeah, I'm leaving this town of Manhattos,
Oh,
and I'm going
Queequeg,
to
do not
go.
touch me.
But do I am like your wife, resting
Yeah.
on snugged against your bosom. But like, yeah, speaking like a guy from Manhattan, right? So, but like, my God, dude. But that's what got me because about 20 pages, I'm like, well, what the? I'm like, this pretentious fuck, dude. No, like fucking like sailors going to talk about this. They go to find out that like Melville grew up with some wealth, and then became a sailor himself because his
Mhm.
family lost money and had to figure out what to do. And then
Yeah, and
like
this is and after he's been an educated man, like he's already
right.
gone through college and
Right, and
yeah.
so it just this I feel like this is undeniably like, an adaptation of him, like,
Oh,
in
of course.
it's
I
going
think
on
it's
it's
definitely autobiographical in a lot of ways. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. No, no, for sure, but it just kinda, like, going through this, so and then making him not so heroic, humble, and, like, all this stuff, so you like, we read through that lens, just like, okay, buddy, okay. Yeah, I know you're trying to impress Hawthorne, but yeah,
Trying to butter us up
tone it
here.
down, tone it down, tone it down. I get spicy with indigenous people, man, and yeah, I share a bed. We got it on with Queequeg like Bert and Ernie. They were Bert and Ernie before
Shit.
Bert and Ernie, dude. But but I just like obviously you needed him, and then like with the epilogue, you don't have the story of Moby Dick if you don't have Ishmael going through there. But I just like did you enjoy him and his point of view like through this book, or did you find
Oh,
him like
I found like he really only has much. He doesn't have much of a character after they get on the boat. He's
right,
more just there observing. You don't
right,
actually. I mean, you could say because he's the one that's thinking all the thoughts about philosophy and the nature of things and blah blah blah, which is just really just Melville. That's just
okay. This is
But
what
like but he doesn't really have much of a character after that. He's just a young, impressionable adventure seeker that wants to like make something of himself.
kind of like the kid. Okay, no, I lied. No more Blood Meridian. No more
No, but
Blood.
no, he I think he does have some parallels with the kid,
Hmm.
especially. Oh, certainly, one hundred
Yeah.
percent.
So I found it hard at some points. I'm like, where is this Ishmael right now, or are we just going on to another fucking
Well, yeah, no, because it does it. It goes from sometimes it's his point of view, and then sometimes it's just like reading something out of a textbook, and it's
right?
not, and it's like not him. It's like super third person.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. So, but it just really like knowing that too. So it's just almost like this novel. Oh, not almost. It is kind of like a timepiece for the most like lucrative and impactful industry in American history at the
I
time,
think so, one hundred
right?
percent.
And just I
That's
love
what's so fascinating about kind of some of the dry stuff. I mean, it's
yeah,
just it is dry, but it is also kind of interesting.
yeah. But the just the whole description of getting up to New Bedford, right, and just trying to find out I actually thought it was like humorous, the whole like the fucking tavern guy fucking with them, and then
Yeah, no,
like
yeah.
like it was like
Well, it felt real. It feels real, actually. That even that first scene when Ishmael goes to that tavern, it's very well like etched.
yeah,
Like you can feel it, you can smell it. The people actually act like human beings act, not
hmm,
like somebody that's just there to get you to the next part of the story.
right, right. There's no
Because they
care
take the time
there
for that
for
guy, like
right.
you said, they take the time for that bartender who's there in the book for 4 pages. He has
Hmm.
a little character. He's like,
Yeah,
he fucks with the kid a little bit, offers him a bed. The kid tries to sleep on a bench, tries to
yep,
give him a blanket. Like just little things like that.
yeah, yeah. It just all builds up and it just really got me into this because when I was thinking like, why do I enjoy? Is that what a good novel is? Something that just really makes you think, or is a good novel something that you enjoy reading it and you enjoy thinking about it, or if it just gets you to think about it a lot afterwards, was that the mission statement? Did that accomplish it, right? And so I think it's either or, right? It's either or.
I think it could be all of those things though. Like cuz
Um,
it's all relative to the piece itself. So some
right,
books you're going to have like
but
Moby Dick is a little bit harder of a read, but at the end of it you're like I'm really glad I read that. I'm really
right, like
glad
we
I
said
went.
earlier, we feel accomplished. We're like,
Yeah,
yeah, I
yeah.
did the thing. Yeah, it was almost like a relief. Like, oh God, God,
And
yes,
sometimes you read like a Stephen King book and you're like, I enjoyed reading that and it was a good story. And
Right.
I've thought of a few things. You know.
But that good story though, that's what gets around like what's a good novel. But like, what is a good story, right? Because because you and I grew up reading The Hobbit and The Lord of the
The
Rings,
eternal question, Paul. What is a
right?
good
Lord
story?
of the Rings, all right, and like we that's like quintessential, beautiful, classic story, beautiful
Hmm.
classic story, right? And just thinking of like with Moby Dick, like is like what makes something timeless too, right? And we've talked about this like a lot of times when we do reviews of Kubrick films, but it just really comes down to like those human experiences, and really something that gets you to think about the human experience, but like really how much we
Yes.
haven't evolved, but just like real life shit that you experience and grapple with, and that you could still see happening today, right?
Hmm.
And so you could replace the whaling expedition with anything else. You could do it with like pipelining. You can do it with
Yeah.
like you could do it with anything, right? And then like you could still have a great story with that. And so I think like with this, it was just really just the world building and the character development because like you
And I
really
think it
brought
just
in on the
it taps into something like almost supernatural about the human experience.
yeah
These kind of universal abstract notions of like identity and what you're doing and belief and God and is
yeah
there no God, things like that. You know, it's like it's dealing in very lofty notions,
yeah
and
yeah
it plays out in some ways like a cautionary tale,
yeah
a little bit, right?
can be yeah
But what is the ultimate? What is it cautioning us against?
right
What is it? Is it cautioning us against obsession? Is it cautioning us against trying to fight against nature and conquer it? Is it trying to communicate that like our how we try to reconcile our relationship with a god?
right
Like, what is it? Or is it all of those things, you know?
right 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 and that's the beauty of it, because it's take your fucking pick.
Well,
What
cuz it's just like they say in the novel itself, right? Like, is the color white just a void?
hmm
Is it a void? Right, because chapter 42, it's like a big famous chapter because it's called, I think, The Whiteness of the Whale.
hmm
And they just talk, it's like, I think it's like a 20-page chapter
yeah
just about the nature of the color white, its mythological meaning, its potential religious significance, etc.
hmm
Like all of these kind of notions. Also talks about the culture and kind of the hierarchy of races at the time in there as well. Um,
yeah because 10 years before the Civil War broke out, this came
yeah,
out, right?
yeah.
And you think about these concepts, like this is what people are thinking about, uh and then like some like history books that you read or whatever is direct like nothing is like black and white, no pun intended, right? It wasn't. People were just as complex intellectually and thought of it like day to day then as they are now, right? And so
Hmm.
like when you see this time capsule of something from damn near 200 years ago, right, and just it makes you really wonder about like life back then, like what really went on, like what's really going on. It makes you question history. It makes you think and go down like all these rabbit holes. Like,
Yeah.
I think too many people just like
Well, we
get off these
oversimplify things because
right,
we oversimplify it because we only think of history as like little paragraphs crammed in a school textbook. We don't
right.
appreciate it for the fact of like how complicated and wild and crazy it is, just like the world is right now. You
No
know,
context, right? There's no. We don't give it any context. We don't.
I
Not
mean,
every
which
history
is,
book is
but
written like by Henry by Herman Melville because you don't get that context, right? You can have like a 200-year period crammed up in like 5 pages, right? And
mhm.
like like what sticks out from that, right? What sticks out from that? Okay,
And what's
that's
cool about something like this is you're getting like a firsthand report
yeah,
of what it was actually like to be in those situations. What did it feel like? How did it like? What kind of beds did they sleep on? All
yeah,
that kind of stuff. And you actually get like a real, almost like journalistic, documentarian type perspective of life at the time.
yep,
Within a fun adventure story.
yeah, absolutely, dude, absolutely. There's but the one last thing I want to say about Ishmael too. You want to talk about American tradition or like or American concern. He had this. It was early on in the chapter, and he's going on. He makes this comment where he's worried about not being insured. Like, so there you go. There you go. Insurance, it's American as fuck. Not having insurance is American as fuck.
It's some things never change, man. Some
Some
things
things
just
never do. They never
some
do.
things never
So,
change. I guess this would be a good time, since we're kind of talking about Ishmael, to talk about. Do you think, do you think that this is a subversive, queer, and terrifyingly relevant?
personally queer and terrifyingly relevant.
Yeah. Do you think? Or do you think that that this is coded gay relationships, like
I
between
think
like Ishmael and Queequeg, and Ishmael makes remarks, later in the book when they're like cutting up a whale and they're like the spermicide, they're like pulling it out and they're like touching each other's hands, and he remarks upon it.
feels great. Feels
Good
good.
for good for
Well,
the skin.
I would counter that with that it's about as gay as Fight Club. That's about as gay as Fight Club it is. Uh, like and this isn't, and I'm saying that too because like well, one, like boys rule. It's just a thing. Like the
It's just
dudes,
the way dudes
like,
rock. Dudes rock.
it's gonna be a fun time. It's gonna be a fun time. But the other part is like when you go on to like these, like they call it like trauma bonding, like in a war
Yes.
you
Yeah, of
go on,
course.
you're going to have that, you're going to develop
You become intimate.
you're going to develop
Well,
into
this is the thing, and this because the queer lobby has destroyed the idea of intimacy as being a non-sexual thing. Like male intimacy now is always just seen as queer, as homosexual,
right.
and it's not. Like you said, like there are times in your life where you have friendships that are deep, like that are like brotherly. Like
Yeah,
it's not, and but it's close, but you're close and you're comfortable with each other.
yeah,
And it's not like it's not a sexual thing.
right.
But like I don't know what's happened in the past like 40 years, but it feels like that's something that's been like, and that's why I made that comment. The queer lobby has kind of forever changed
Right.
that notion that we know, like that's, and it's a problem with that. I think young men and men in general just have nowadays is like dealing with male intimacy,
Right.
like because it's coded as being gay.
Right.
So you're like, no, I don't want that.
Right.
So you close yourself off and you're a little bit more reserved and you're not going to like talk about how you really
Right.
feel about shit. Like you're going to be too stoic.
Well, right.
And
There's also like cultural differences too, right? So
sure,
like ironically, like in the Middle East, uh, like you can get beheaded for actually doing homosexual acts,
but they're
but
very intimate.
they are very intimate. They
Yeah.
fucking kiss. They hold hands walking by, like they
Just
like
bros.
just bros, and then they will literally hold hands. You see two guys wearing pistachios or like walking like in the gowns and hold hands. You're like, what the fuck? But like, no, that's the thing. And like, wait, like, they're literally going to stone me if I like bang a dude? Wow, really? Those
Wow.
guys?
Yeah.
What? What?
And they're going to
What?
hold hands and kiss while they're doing
What?
it.
What? How is that? Wait,
These,
whatever,
these,
whatever.
fu-
It's all gay. But
these,
no,
fuck,
I,
these fucking queer.
yeah, but
Throw the
no, like,
stone.
it obviously had to with his own personal like voyages and his experiences and like especially like South America. It's kind of a similar like vibe to that too. He probably thought that was really interesting, and maybe he probably thought it was like a beautiful thing too.
No,
And
but
when,
I think it's kind of very similar to like the way that like there's a lot of revisionist history with some historical figures
oh yeah,
like Abraham Lincoln, right? The
yeah,
Abraham Lincoln being gay theory, which has come back into vogue in the past few years. It kind of disappeared for 20 years and now it's kind of come back. Is all based off of a out of the closet gay guy historian from the 1930s that described Abraham Lincoln's relationship with one of his bunkmates as having a touch of lavender. That's it, and that started the whole thing. That's where it started from.
touch of lavender.
And what they did, and what they did, and what
felt nice.
It was like soft. It was it was a gay guy. Like I don't know. I don't know if he was, because at the time out in the wilderness, people would share beds.
Mm-hmm.
So if you and your buddy were in a cabin, you would sleep in the same bed. It wasn't a weird thing. It's about like, it could be about warmth, it could be about whatever, or it could just because culturally at the time it was just what people did.
Right, right.
You know what I mean? That's what's going on in Moby Dick. At the
Yeah.
time culturally, like that's not like a weird red flag or whatever. It's just because it's not a sexual thing. It's
No.
just notice it's a notice of an intimacy
Right.
between you. It's a closeness. Like you're
Mm-hmm.
bonded in some way.
Right.
But because we're going to look through a modern lens, through modern cultural context and social mores, then they distort the intention
Right.
and they
Right.
try to retcon what it means. They do all that. They do this with Joan of Arc. They do this with lots of literary figures. They do this with historical figures. Another one is Alexander the Great. The whole Alexander the Great thing is from like one quote from like one of the philosophers that wrote about Alexander the Great, saying like the relationship between Alexander and his friend would sometimes be so intense that it would the thunder of their bodies clashing together would like move mountains. And then that got read
Like
into like,
Brokeback
oh
Mountain?
yeah,
Like Brokeback Mountain?
then that
Yeah.
got read into as, oh, they're fucking, oh, and they're Greek, and that was what the people did at the time, so they were obviously fucking each other. There's no supporting evidence for that at all.
Right.
That was it. That's it. It's just that fucking line.
Right. Right.
Dude, it's crazy how stupid some of this shit is.
And is that would the term appropriation be appropriate for that? Is
I
that
don't
the,
know.
if you want to appropriate like it out like some event or quote to use it to
It's recontextualize it.
recontextualize. There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. There you go. Yeah.
Yep.
No. Totally get that. I mean, obviously, it's fun with the language. Everything was queer.
Everything's queer.
Yeah, so queer. And all the talk about spermaceti.
Oh, no. He's queer as they come. He's queer as they come.
It's,
No, I read about it in that book.
get the spermaceti, and we're going to.
That's the best job on the boat, dude. Ishmael told me so.
Smells so
Loved
good.
it.
Smells so good. What the one with Bill saying about Ishmael too is he makes a comment there at the time. Another thing that we didn't know that we learned because now we can defend dissertations on 19th century whaling now, right? As we just established earlier, is that there was from one secrement from the well. There's a type of oil that was used for anointing, kings and queens in
That's right. Yeah.
England and stuff. And then just like and just talking about this, because only somebody that came out of money or had like some wealth would have enough awareness or enough to just know culturally like what's going on, and like to think like how you're perceived or whatnot. If you grew up in poverty or whatnot, then you're used to that. You're kind of like used to that. But like coming for money and then just seeing how people could potentially perceive you or like projecting this because that's what you previously did to someone else or would think that whether it was intentional or not, just how you were raised and thinking like, yeah, no, yeah, you think you're better than me? The fucking like secretments I pull out of whales thousands of miles out in the ocean that's stuff for kings. Yeah. I make kings, right?
Yeah. I suppose, yeah, you could really start leaning into it.
Yeah, it's like whatever. You don't like what I do? Then you
Oh,
can't.
I'm a loser? I don't
Yeah.
think so, buddy.
Okay. Yeah, I shoved my hand up a well orifice. I fucking got that.
And I got
Yeah,
that king juice.
you know why my hands are so smooth? That spermaceti, baby.
Yes, that spermaceti.
No, it reminded me of there's this like famous quote. I don't know if it's real or not, but somebody asked a janitor that worked at NASA, who's the janitor for a building at NASA, like, what's he doing? He goes, I help get people to the moon. Right, and people,
Yeah.
all kinds of business courses, everyone talks about, it's all about perspective, and they're like twisting. He's got to clean up the facilities for people who use blah blah. But it's just like, but who knows? The dude could just been like a complete wise ass. Like, what do you do? I'm in my onesie holding a mop and bucket. I'm in NASA. I send people to the moon, motherfucker. Dude,
Yeah.
stop.
He
Fucking
just
leave me alone.
yeah,
I got one more holiday.
he could have been being a smart ass. He could have been being a smart ass.
Exactly. So yeah, but it just kind of like, but that was like a little while ago, and this kind of ties into the other thing where people recontextualize or just take that. Oh, I like that. Oh, this could be used for this, and like we'll use that, right? So who knows? It could be entertaining. It can be used for that, but like, is it true? I don't know. But are you entertained? Are you entertained? I guess at the end of the day, that's what matters. But yeah, dude, like, yeah, but Ishmael just going on about like, yeah, just fucking. Actually, I am kind of the shit. It was just like the most like, yeah, like young man peacock and chest
Which
pound.
kind of, which, when you think about it, like it makes sense. Like, because it's from his first person perspective, and that's how you would be,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, yeah,
You remember being 21.
yeah,
The world was your oyster.
yeah. Yeah, but it's on my. It's one of the fish that I thought about like what makes a great story, like just the adventure, and just like thinking about like if you got a good trip coming up, right, and just like it's just even in the past when you're a kid, just like think of how pumped you are and everything's coming on, like like you're paying attention to everything, and then this place that you're going to go check out, like it's going like you remember when we were kids and we are going to go to Cancun, and
Hmm.
like we are like just like, oh, they got this there, oh, there's going to be so many women, like all pumped up that, yep, yep, yep. Pay attention to everything, right? Spend the night at Logan Airport so we won't miss an early flight, and we're just like, oh, fucking pumped, right? And it just like if every adventure story from like Lord of the Rings I brought up earlier, and then even with Moby Dick, he even had a quasi like little mini adventure just getting up to New Bedford and then and turn to Nantucket and just like okay, like I'm pumped and I'm already having obstacles of going through here, and then you just get this whole building, just world building and just all this like really good development, even though at points it was dry, but I just really think that's really what comes down to. Are you really painting this world that well? And like for some reason, I just never really thought too much about like world building outside of sci-fi
Sure.
like with some of this, and then just sitting there like I don't really understand how this galaxy works. I'm snobby about that shit, and I'm
But
like,
we
yeah,
but we
oh,
have the same relationship with history, right? We
right,
don't understand history in the
yeah,
way that it was. So
mm-hmm,
it's cool to when you read stuff like Moby Dick, you're like, oh, this is like I'm really kind of seeing how it was a little bit, right?
right,
Like, and that's really it's a neat like little peek into a world gone by.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. So you are fully equipped with the knowledge and the scene, right? So they even write it in there like Heb, enter stage right, motherfucker. Like,
Yeah, that's the way the book's so weird. It does
yeah.
that shit.
Yeah, it is, but yeah, apparently there's like issues like because when it came out at the time, I guess in 19th century America, we still gave a shit about what England thought. And when they
Hmm.
sent the book out that way, they chopped it a lot into a lot of pieces. Like they even took out the epilogue. I
Oh,
was reading
really?
that part, yeah, which is
Oh,
like
that's right. I read that,
how
and
do you
it
like
was really poorly. It was really poorly received as a consequence. Yeah.
right, and be like, so it was written by a dead man. How do we know? It's blah blah. And they're like, motherfuckers, they took it out. They took it out. So, but and then I did read something too that he never recovered after this book flopping either. So that's
Yeah, he's kind of
that,
stopped writing like full time, and then went into federal insurance. The federal insurance
yeah,
game, I
he
think.
was no, he was an inspector. Uh, yeah,
Yeah,
he became a federal employee and he was doing something with inspections.
and then
So,
and he did. Yeah, and then but he still wrote poetry, and he still wrote short stories and stuff. I think just for
right,
kind of
right,
as a hobby, leisure.
hmm
Yeah,
yeah,
because it wasn't very well received
no.
at the time, and I guess I can kind of understand
Well,
why.
imagine reading that and then not having the epilogue.
Well, that yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Like that alone too. Apparently there's other shit that was taken out. I think a lot of Scientology shit was taken
Yes,
out.
I think no, all the stuff that they would have deemed to be kind of boring, and they wanted to tighten it up to make it a quicker, kind of pulpy adventure novel. Because it's
Yeah.
not a pulpy novel at all. Like it's a real novel.
Yeah. 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 A great, they say. One of the
The
greats, they
great
say.
American novel.
One of the greats, they say. But yeah, but it was dude, it was nuts. And then in the periphery, like with all this, I was a mutual friend of ours that we grew up with was telling me I was telling him this past weekend. I'm like, yeah, no, he's like, he was asking about you, and I'm like, oh yeah, you just still talk to him? I'm like, yeah, man, actually, I'm going to talk to him next weekend about Moby Dick. He's like, what? Like, yeah, no. Like, we're reading it, and he's like, oh man, you got to read The Heart of the Sea. That's what inspired Melville to write Moby Dick. And I was just like, I was like, well, I didn't know. Okay, well, I didn't know the motherfucker reads for fun. And then two, and I was just sitting there, I was like, really? Wow, that is nuts. Which, if you haven't like heard about that story of the Essex or whatnot, you should definitely
No,
check
no,
it out.
I have, yeah, no, it's loosely inspired by that story. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So that was pretty nutty. But I felt like, oh yes, I know this because I am now an expert.
No, man.
Well,
Actually, they made a movie of In the Heart of the Sea a few years ago. It was like Chris Hemsworth. Ron Howard directed it. I
uh,
never saw it. I
yeah,
heard it wasn't very good, but
yeah,
I never watched it.
yeah. Well, yeah. Maybe I will after I watch an adaptation of Moby Dick. So
I would say, the 1956 one is not like the best movie, but it's like a decent adaptation if you just want to like see the story,
yeah,
And Gregory Peck's a lot of fun. You watch the scene with Orson Welles.
yeah, yeah. And I feel at this time that's all I needed to see.
Honestly, you could just go watch the Gregory Peck speeches.
Yeah, that's
Honestly,
true. That's true.
like, because I think Gregory Peck might have been a little too young
To be Ahab.
to be Ahab at the time. But then I was thinking, I was like, well, everybody used to die when they were like 50, So like these guys weren't like old men.
Hmm.
Um,
Right. Well, Ahab was 50. Yeah.
yeah, I think he was like in
Oh.
his late 40s or something.
Yeah. Well, he kept saying 40 years, 40 years. First sale was at 18, so he would have been 48. So there you have it. There you have it. This is
Yeah, because yeah,
accurately casted. You know.
yeah.
Oh.
Well, no. Gregory
Oh.
Peck at
Oh.
the time was like probably in his early 30s.
Well, early 30s and the 50s is like 50 today.
Well,
So
no, because they have old men. They have like makeup on them.
yeah. Oh shit.
Yeah, yeah. But I don't know. But he's fun. It's a fun performance. Like it's very scenery chewing, kind of like a Daniel Day Lewis like scenery chewing kind of performance.
Huh.
It is fun. It was fun. I watched me and Foster watched it this afternoon. He
No,
actually liked it. He liked it, and I was reading some of it too. And then he was like, "Hey, can we read some more Moby Dick?" I was like, "Okay,
no kidding.
cool. I'll read you
They
Moby
have a
Dick,
kid's
dude."
version, but if he's already interested in the real novel, then there you go.
Well, he was like really fascinated by the whales. Like he actually one night I was on that chapter, the deep cetology lesson, and he was like, "Whoa, that's really cool."
That would interest a kid, though, if you think about it.
Yeah, because it's all the kind of things he's into, into
Yeah,
like big sea
Leviathan.
creatures and
Tell you about the
leviathans. He's
Leviathans.
obsessed with the Loch Ness monster. Oh, like
Yeah.
obsessed, dude. He brings me things all the time. He's like, "Dad, how can you say this is not real?" He's like, "Look at this. Look at
It,
this footage."
it's so real. It's so real.
And it's like somebody did like a shitty CGI Loch Ness with like computer generated fog obscuring everything. I was like,
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I don't know.
Yeah. The beauty of being young, dude.
Yeah, it's so much fun. It's so much fun. I really really enjoy sharing stuff like this with my son now. He's like at the perfect age for stuff like this.
That's awesome.
Or at least to watch the movie. I don't know how much he's going to get out of the book, but
Not quite yet, but at least it could be whatever they'll call hipsters. And when Gen Alphas grow up, he could be. No, I read that. My dad read that to me when I was like
when I
6.
was like 6 years old.
Yeah, man.
Um,
Hell yeah.
so what did you think of the crew, the general crew? I really liked the crew. I thought it was like an interesting cast of characters. The first, second, and third mate are the ones that get most of the character development.
Most of the character time, but there's no, poor Pip, poor Pip. And not the you're like, let's talk about the rest of the crew. Then I'm like, yeah, one more thing about Ahab, right? Which was like, where like he like the friends like Pip, he's like, oh, I like this little colored boy.
Yeah,
This is great. The heavens beseech this one, man. Oh, what a
he's
cruel world.
he's a very
What a cruel
progressive man.
and then realizes that like this is gonna like Pip could be a problem with what I actually want here. So let me distance myself from Pip. So it's just like poor Pip, man, poor Pip.
Yeah, he
But
kind of
no,
gets.
the whole crew, like as part of the story, like it just like you really enjoyed everything, right? But at the
Hmm?
same time, everyone went through it. The voyage of the sea brought out like the best of them, and then Ahab brought out the worst of them, and then they
Yeah,
died. You
yeah.
know, so I didn't have like anything really like that like other than like like good like side pieces like they like I think they all supported the role. It made you feel like it was a robust crew.
Yeah. Well, and I also liked kind of the nature of the crew as a collective, like the way that Melville would write about them.
Yeah,
You know, because he kind of gave them like an honorability, like a nobility in a way. He's like, there's something noble about being a whaleman,
yeah,
and because they're like the ultimate survivalists. They're
yeah.
the ultimate self-actualized man. They don't need anything except their own abilities and the sweat on their brow, and they'll be fine.
Well, and their shipmates, right? And so, like, because he goes like painful detail about that. Like, he wants you to care about it. He wants you to know. You think you can do this? You can't. You can't. I'm telling you right now, you can't do it. Right? So we bring the stuff that makes kings. Right? Like
And
he's very open about that. But again, it really gets you into thinking about 19th century America in the ocean on a little wooden boat with a fucking harpoon going after a 70 fucking foot, like 300-ton fucking Leviathan and
yeah,
stabbing it. Like, dude, like this thing could like swallow you whole and you're going to feel like, Jonah and
yeah.
and you're just going to fucking boom. Like, that dude, just about, can you imagine just being that close on like a little boat in this fucking thing? I've been on
No.
a kayak before where I forget the type of shark it was, but they're only like 3 feet. But you know how fucking freaky that is to see something like swim by you? You're just like,
Yeah. And you're
oh,
completely
and I'm
vulnerable.
on a kayak. Imagine being on like a wooden boat and something that's bigger than the fucking boat the main
Well,
boat.
dude, that's not like who the fuck had the gumption.
Oh god, I don't know, but thinking about it's giving me
It
anxiety.
reminds me of like oil. It's just like oil riggers. Like the
Yeah.
guys out that work out in those oil rigs, dude. They do some fucking wild shit out there, dude. Those are wild boys out
Yeah.
there. I've worked with some of those types of people,
Hmm.
and
Or you seen like the pictures from the 30s, right? The skyscraper like construction workers, fucking like no OSHA, nothing, no harnesses on that fucking. Like, everyone's seen the
oh,
picture, right?
oh.
They're all eating lunch out there. Like, what the fuck, dude? Like, you know what I mean? Just like this country is built by fucking just like brutal
By
people, and like,
badasses, fucking
dude, just
motherfuckers.
yeah,
Yeah,
man. Like, yeah, no wonder why you
that's
look
why we can't
for 30
squash.
when you're 18 years old. So it's
That's
like,
why. That's why we can't. Like, we have to stop the squashing of toxic masculinity. Like, it has a very good purpose. It served us very well throughout the ages.
one,
Okay.
there's no such thing as toxic masculinity. But
No,
two,
I know. I'm
yes.
being
But two,
facetious.
yeah, I know. But two, yes, it makes civilizations run. It makes civilizations
Dude, you read things
outlast
like
other civilizations. You need
well,
it.
exactly, exactly. And you
And
know
what?
what? And you read things like Moby Dick, and you feel like such a pussy.
Yeah.
You feel like you're like I have never done anything even remotely.
That's one of the like the greatest parts for me experiences like go reading this. I was like, yeah, what the fuck ever, dude. It's a fucking old ass book about someone that's obsessed with a whale and like they go hunt whales. But then you take a second, then you take, or in our case, 5 weeks, and you let that breathe a little bit. And you start reading about it. And you start thinking about the whole process and what you have to do and where you are and how you can't just fucking call
It
somebody.
just seems
And
so
how you got to figure out where
insurmountable.
you are in the ocean, out in the ocean, 2,000 nautical miles away from the coast that deported from, to find like some fucking uh, whatever the fucking thing is called, and paper in the fucking stars to get back. Like, what? Like, how do what? Like, you start
No,
thinking
it's
about it, you're like, you're right. Yeah. Well, man, I am.
no, it's like a fucking alien world. Like you were saying
Yeah,
before, like that's why it's so important to like take the time to really invest the audience, invest the reader in the reality of their circumstances.
right,
Because you wouldn't understand it. Like you wouldn't appreciate it. You wouldn't
right.
appreciate the magnitude, the effort, the Herculean effort it would take to do something like this at that time with those resources. Like that's fucking crazy.
Yeah,
It blew my mind the whole time. I was just like, "Oh my god." Like this is people used to do this shit.
yeah.
Crazy shit, dude.
Oh, well, and also like in a like funny like patriotic way too. It's just like, and of course Americans, not just Americans, but New Englanders ruled the world in this industry.
Dude, and that's something that is remarked upon in chapter 42. the
Yeah.
nature of whiteness.
Yeah.
It actually is. Like the like the drive, it's because it's like divine or something,
Heh. Divine or unholy, you know? Like,
or unholy. It could be that too, because it could be our hubris
right?
that we stand against the natural order. We are disruptors. We are a plague. We're a virus, and we consume and we just take.
We do. We do. Oh, well, and then, like, the everlasting,
That's the perfect answer. We do, man. We fucking do.
yeah, we do. But, or is it like, so if you went down, like, the rabbit hole of, like, reincarnation, right? So
Yeah.
dinosaurs roamed the earth, right? We found out recently, it's still debatable. It's still a spicy topic, though, but like petrol isn't, you know, dinosaurs. We can actually make that now. But you think about it, though, like that was like everything kind of gives back to the earth, right? And then, so the dinosaurs ruled the world, and then they were taken out, and then we like exploited the remains, like eons later, right?
Hmm.
And then, like, what were the whales doing? What were whales doing that now they're sacrificing this, right? And then what will people inevitably be, right? To like something else, right?
Yeah.
We all feed into the world. It's all an ecosystem. It all keeps
It's a
self-replicating.
cycle. There's
Right.
just giant cycles.
Right. And so, like, what will we do? So, like, will we
Yeah.
make, the AI technology that we end up having
Yes.
servant? Will it become the Matrix? Will this,
Yes.
be some Skynet shit, right? Are
Yes.
people like, oh man, can you imagine the biologic people?
Dude, I'm
Can you
telling
imagine
you,
that?
we are willing ourselves into a simulation.
Yeah.
We are no, because people talk about it like, oh, like the theory, oh, we're inside a simulation. No, we are constructing it piece by piece, the ability to do that.
Yeah. By
And
making it
everybody acts
so
like they
bad,
don't understand that.
by making the world so bad that you want nothing else but to go into the box. Let me put on the permanent VR
Well,
installation onto my head, and then I'm done. I'm done.
and
Goodbye.
also just the technological process. They're just building the pieces for that to be real. That's what they're doing. I mean, that's you can see it right there, and then what you just said will be the reason why people will probably want to accept it and just want to plug into it.
Yeah, right. So unreal. But that's kind of, look at that. 200 years later, Moby Dick is still relevant to our inevitable like simulation, cyborg, apocalyptic fucking demise, right?
Yeah.
In
Yep.
the end, technology and the advancements of man and all the hard work, all the giants that we stand on today throughout history to be where we are today with all these achievements, we gave us the ability, the freedom to become Ahab and chase our own madness into our own demise.
No, but that's what we are doing.
And that's what I know, but now we can, with Moby Dick and saying that we read a classical piece, we can tie it to that and be a
That's
lot
true.
more poetic. Did you think this was poetic?
Yes, I did at times. I think it depends which like gear it's in. Sometimes it's in like adventure story gear. Sometimes it's in like thoughtful philosophical gear. Sometimes it's in journalist gear.
Yeah,
Sometimes it's a cytology gear.
yeah, yeah. I'm not going to read the whole like two paragraphs, but it's like on page 230. I feel like Melville wrote the entire book just so he could write these two paragraphs. But I'm just going to do the last one. For as this appalling ocean surrounds the verdant land, so in the soul of man lies one insular Tahiti, full of peace and joy, but encompassed by all the horrors of the half-known life. God keep thee! Push not off from that isle, thou canst never return. And I just fucking, when I read that, I was like, that is baller. And then when I listened to it, I'm like, the guy Effort Fiction, he did a great job. I was just like, oh, they didn't really do it. And so that's why I had to I dabbled around with those AIs. I had Sean Bean do it. I want,
Oh, really?
I wanted to find Orson Welles AI one, but I couldn't find one. And then I'm like, all right, I'll pay the $2 for Sean Bean to do it, and $2 for Michael Jackson for another Zoobox special. But like, like I was like, yeah, let's do it. But like, just that whole line. But like the paragraph that supersedes it is just talking about like what we said at the top of the recording. It's just, what are you going to do in this world, right? And it's just painting out this picture, this big vast land. The the sea creatures that roam underneath, eat each other, eternal war since the earth began, since the world began. And like, do you see some strange parallel in yourself? He's asking you as the reader right there. Like, what do you like? What do you do? But it's also serene. It's also beautiful. Also on this verdant land, this beautiful land that you have the security in. Probably, yeah. Well, at least 19th century now, sure is. Just debatable where you are now in the world, right? But just know you are surrounded by this. You are
Yeah.
surrounded by this carnage that's been going on since the beginning of time, right? And you're going to venture off, and like, and I love the use of like the half known life, right? Because we
Yeah.
only know the surface, right? We
Yeah.
only know the surface of it. The world that we live in is 80% fucking water, and it's just like it's just no, I'm telling you, that's what was like great about like why I said at the beginning, like I enjoyed thinking about this more than like actually reading it because I went, dude, this was me last like 5 weeks, just like going on these spirals, just thinking about it, man. And I was just
Yeah.
like, yeah, like this was at times like poetry when it wasn't boring as fuck. It was really
No,
fucking
but
riveting.
sometimes it was really beautifully written,
Yeah,
like just like the passage you just read. Like it just speaks on so many levels. It's like such a
yeah,
beautifully like kind of simple passage, but it says so much.
it does, man.
It really does, and it's and the book is full of stuff like that. By the way, it's we kind of been talking about like the boring stuff, but even the boring stuff isn't that boring. It's
In retrospect, it's not. It's not.
but there's a lot of like really beautiful prose in the book, especially when he's talking about the philosophy. I mean, chapter 42, The Nature of Whiteness, is like a masterful chapter. Like you could read that on its own,
Yeah,
just in a vacuum, and
yeah, you could.
it's just really well done.
Yeah.
And it's usually the chapter that people point to as being kind of the heart of understanding the story, kind of.
Mm.
um, but yeah,
Moby Dick, baby.
Moby Dick, man.
We did it. I still can't believe that. Like after we read our last book, and we're like, yeah, let's see Moby Dick in a couple weeks. Like a couple of fools.
I mean, I think we could have done it, but
we
it
could
wouldn't
have,
have been.
we could have, but then it would be, we wouldn't have. It wouldn't have been as a rich an experience. Like I enjoyed
Yeah, I
not reading
enjoyed.
for a couple days and
Yeah,
like really like focus honing in on it. And so
yeah, exactly. Like, it was nice to kind of take my time with it in a leisurely way because I feel like that was just the best way to experience it, honestly.
yeah,
And like you said, because you have that time for reflection and you're thinking about it, especially and maybe we get a little bit more out of these because we're not passively reading them. We're reading them on knowing that we're going to talk to each other about it, so you're a little bit more like keyed into it.
yeah,
You're being a little bit more thoughtful. You're looking for the things that are interesting about
yeah,
it.
yeah. Why am I reading this, right? And so, like, normally when we pick something we want to read, like, we know why because we're going to talk about it. But like, I was going on a bit about like, what makes a good book. Like, and not at one point am I wondering. I know we're going to talk about it for Zoobox, but there's some books I read. You've been there too. Where just like, why am I continuing this? Why am I doing this right now? Right? And
Yeah.
then never once happened through this journey. Like if we weren't going to talk about it, I'd still finish it.
Oh, of
You would have
course.
told
Yeah,
me
me
like two
too.
weeks ago, hey man, like this ain't like I don't want to, for whatever reasons I don't want to talk about it. I still would have finished it, and
Yeah.
it's like it was great, man.
No, it's like a very rewarding experience at the
Hmm.
end of it. And
Yeah.
and it was cool to peer into that time in history. It was cool to just like learn about whaling. It was cool to just think about your own kind of place in history and the continuum of it and like where we are now as humanity
Hmm.
from then and how those things kind of built where we are now
Yeah.
and how we operate, because it's kind of, the beginnings of major industry and it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
It's cool. It was cool to like get that firsthand perspective about it.
Yeah. Absolutely, dude. 100%. 100%. Yeah. Do you have any last footnotes? Because
I
Melville gave
think
a shit ton of footnotes.
a fuck ton of footnotes. Like it's very detailed. Like you learn things. It's an
Yeah.
education. It's an education. I think this would be a great book for anyone in their late 20s or early 30s.
Mm.
And because I think it kind of reaffirms something about not just the human spirit, but in particular, like masculine endeavor,
Right, because
masculine energy, and like what that is, and how that is a force for good and accomplishment, and it's not something to like be discarded. It kind of
with the
reminds you of
cautionary
that.
tale of how it could get you to be an Ahab too, and
Sure,
rally that
exactly. Yeah,
masculinity.
no, it's fair. It has a very fair perspective on that experience,
Right,
and
right, and because he does a lot of contrast and talks about Welling, and then it's not direct, deliberate to you, but it's just talking about like how they're people. And he goes on a couple pages about how like female pods are groups of whales go on there. If one of them is danger to hurt, they will all like protect that one, even to the detriment of themselves. But with
yeah,
the dudes, male whale gets injured, right, like they're fucked, or or
yeah, they're mercenary. They're mercenary. Yeah,
they'll attack them just to be, the fast well, like another great line out there where he's talking about like, a loose well or a fast well or whatnot.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
at the end of the day, what are we all but like loose wells being, a well like already harpooned and like so it's like you're
yeah.
bound
Because
by
there's
fate. You're bound by fate to something, right? And then
yes,
someone has already claimed you, and that's what he's like saying. And like, it's yeah, but no, Kasha, but I 100% agree with you. Late 20s, early 30s, where you had enough life to get a good grasp of like who you are, but you still have a lot of life left to live, and
yeah.
where you going to go, right? You haven't finalized everything, right?
It's like make sure you've had your own little adventure in your
Hmm.
20s,
Right. No,
and you have a little time, a little distance to be able to reflect on it.
right.
And this, because that's kind of what this story is in some ways,
Yeah.
especially if you want to think about it from Ishmael's perspective. That's kind of what it is for him. It's his first little adventure, and it's his reflections of it.
Yeah.
It's what his takeaway is, when he's writing it.
Yeah.
So it's good to have like kind of a parallel for yourself, your own little Moby Dick that you've lived through. Everybody's got a little microcosm of something, right?
Exactly. Like
You
I
know,
said, everyone's met a Starbuck, everyone's met,
everybody's been a Starbuck. Everybody's been a Captain Ahab. Everybody's been an Ishmael. Like we've all
Mhm.
inhabited different aspects of these characters, and that's why they're all kind of relatable in a way. Like
Mm.
that is something about the book, that the characters are very like, you understand them.
Right.
You understand why they are the way they are,
Hmm.
and you could, and I think a lot of that is because you can relate to it. Like you can see yourself in them in different moments.
Right.
We've all been fucking Ahabs.
Mm.
Maybe luckily we lived another day. but
Yeah.
we've all got carried away with
No,
something.
we've all been like driven by madness, like to some degree, some level of extremity, right? Less than others, but like we've driven. Like one of my ongoing, like bits at work is like I'm fueled by cold brew and pettiness. That's what
Yeah.
gets me through the day, right? And so that's a very Ahab,
Yeah.
very light
I
Ahab.
can see you saying that, and then wobbling away with your peg leg.
Made with the last motherfucker that said he wish he could.
Yeah,
Yeah. But dude, as always, man, I love doing this with you, man. I love doing this with you.
that was really fun. I'm really glad that we went on that little adventure together. It's well worth your time, man, and I hope people check it out. I hope it, because it's one of those things that I think is starting to be forgotten.
Yeah.
I think it's starting to fade into the cultural dustbin, being replaced by whatever nonsense is out there now. Like, and it's something I don't think we should forget. It's a good reminder it's a reminder of a lot of things about our humanity, but also just a time and a place.
Yeah.
And don't forget where we came from. Let's not do that. you know,
Yeah.
appreciate maybe reading something like this would make you appreciate a little bit more of what you got
Mm-hmm.
and the world that you got to be born into, where you don't have to be a fucking whaler.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, 100%. They appreciate like what happened before you, and don't shit on it. Because if you're not reading all the footnotes and all that context, you won't appreciate it. So do that. Do the work.
Do the
Do
work.
the work.
God damn it. Black girl magic.
Tell me.
Pip. Pip forever, everybody. All right.
The coward.
Adios. Adios.
It was about like the third or fourth time they started calling Ahab queer, and after chapter 80, I'm like, there's nothing queer about him. He is not with the movement. This is not the Ahab of today. Like, I don't even know.
This is the thing. Maybe it was a slur. Maybe it was in a derogatory fashion.
Were they slurring?
Maybe they were slurring.
Civil War.
I mean, they were saying all sorts of crazy stuff over there. Whippawa, Whim Wham.
Well stakes, totally a euphemism.
Whale steaks?
Yeah, I don't know.
My goodness. Whale steaks. Shut it down. You're cut off.
You're done. You're done.